The great space station Ecliptor 9 floated in the darkness of space like a silver ring around a glowing blue planet. It was home to more than 10,000 beings, humans, aliens, and robots, all living and working together under the bright light of twin suns. But today, peace was gone. The alarms screamed through every hall. Red lights flashed across the walls. The sound of running feet echoed everywhere. The air smelled of smoke and burning metal. People shouted orders, calling out for help, but their voices mixed with the chaos. Something terrible had happened. A system failure, an explosion, maybe an attack. No one really knew. All that mattered was escape. Inside one long corridor, a small alien girl ran alone. She was no more than 7 years old, with soft silver skin and glowing blue eyes. Her name was Lyra. She wore a tiny royal robe, though no one noticed. It was too dark, too loud, too full of fear. Her breath came fast. She stumbled, fell, and cried out. The floor shook as another explosion hit somewhere nearby. The lights flickered. Sparks flew from the ceiling. "Mommy," she cried in her own alien language. But her voice was swallowed by the alarm. She looked around, terrified. People rushed past her, not seeing the little girl. Everyone was trying to save themselves. Then, from the other side of the corridor, came a tall man in a gray uniform. Not a soldier, not an officer. He carried no weapon, only a mop and a bucket. His name was Evan, a human janitor. Evan had worked on Ecliptor 9 for years. He knew every corner, every vent, every broken door. He wasn't brave or rich or powerful, but he was kind. When he saw the crying girl on the floor, his heart tightened. The crowd pushed past him, shouting at him to move. But he didn't. He ran toward her instead. He knelt beside her. Hey, it's okay," he said softly. She didn't understand his words, but his calm voice made her look up. Lyra's glowing eyes filled with tears. Her small hands shook. She looked at him like a lost animal, full of fear. Another explosion hit. The lights went out for a moment, then flickered weakly. Smoke filled the air. Evan knew he couldn't leave her here. "Come on, kid," he said.
He gently lifted her up.
She clung to his neck, trembling. He tried to move through the corridor, but the panic was worse ahead. Dozens of people were shouting, pushing, fighting for the escape doors. The emergency pods were already leaving. Evan looked for another way. He spotted a maintenance shaft, small, hidden, but safe. He opened it quickly and crawled inside with the girl in his arms. The sound of the alarm faded a little inside the narrow tunnel. It was dark and quiet. The girl's soft sobs echoed in the small space. Evan tried to think. He needed to calm her down, but how? She didn't understand his words. She didn't even know who he was. Then he remembered something. Inside his pocket was a small bottle of bubble soap. It was silly, but he always carried it. Sometimes, after cleaning long hours, he'd blow bubbles just to relax. It reminded him of Earth, of a time when things were simple. He took out the bottle. The girl looked at it, confused. Evan smiled and dipped the small wand inside. Then he gently blew through it. A stream of shining bubbles floated into the air. They shimmered with the light from the emergency lamp, red, blue, purple, gold. The little girl's eyes widened. Her tears stopped falling. She reached out, touching one of the bubbles as it drifted near her face. It popped softly, leaving a tiny sparkle in the air. Evan laughed quietly. "See? Nothing to worry about," he said. He blew more bubbles, and they filled the tunnel with light. The girl began to laugh too, a soft musical sound. Her glowing skin brightened. For the first time since the alarm began, there was peace in that small space. Outside, the station still roared with chaos, but in that dark maintenance tunnel there was only a man, a child, and the slow dance of shining bubbles. Evan didn't know who she was. He didn't know that she was Princess Lyra, daughter of Queen Soraya, ruler of the Zanari Empire. He only knew that she was scared, and he had to protect her. As the bubbles floated around them, far away in the command tower, a pair of golden eyes watched the scene through a holographic screen. The queen had found her daughter's location. She leaned forward, her long fingers tightening on the armrest of her throne. "Who is that human?" she whispered. No one answered. The guard stood silent, afraid to speak. The queen's eyes stayed fixed on the screen as Evan gently blew another bubble, smiling at the girl who laughed in the middle of danger. And in that moment, the queen's heart filled with something she hadn't felt in years: curiosity. She didn't know this man, but she wanted to, because in a galaxy full of warriors and machines, It was a simple human who made her daughter smile, and that, she knew, could change everything. Far above the smoke and fire of the lower decks, inside the golden heart of Ecliptor 9, sat the royal command chamber of the Zinari Empire. Its walls glowed with soft light, and in the center floated a large crystal screen showing live feeds from across the station. Dozens of alien officers worked silently, trying to control the spreading disaster. But one figure stood still among them, tall, graceful, and full of power. Her name was Queen Soraya, ruler of the Zinari people and mother of the lost child. Her skin shimmered like silver glass. Her eyes were bright gold, glowing with strength but also pain. Her heart was burning with fear for her daughter, Princess Lyra, who had gone missing during the first explosion. For the last 20 minutes, every camera, every drone, every guard had been searching. And now finally the royal scanner found something. "Your Majesty," said the head guard softly, "we found her." The Queen turned fast. "Show me." The crystal screen shifted. Static lines flickered, then cleared. And there, inside a narrow maintenance tunnel, she saw her child. Small, frightened but alive, and beside her, a human man. The Queen frowned. A human? The officers exchanged uneasy looks. Humans were not part of the royal class. Most worked simple jobs, cleaning, repairing, doing the tasks others refused to do. But the Queen's eyes did not leave the screen. She watched as the man, wearing a gray janitor uniform, blew bubbles into the air. Tiny bubbles floated around her daughter. The little princess giggled, reaching for them with glowing hands. For the first time that day, the Queen saw her daughter smile. The room went silent. Even the hum of machines seemed to fade. Her advisor, General Thalor, broke the silence. "Your Majesty, this is highly irregular. That human could be dangerous. Shall I send a recovery squad?" But the Queen raised her hand. "Wait," the general hesitated. "Wait." But the human. "Look," she whispered. Everyone turned back to the screen. The man didn't look like a threat. His movements were gentle. His eyes were kind. He wasn't armed and he wasn't running away. He was only trying to make the little girl calm. The Queen's expression softened, though her voice stayed cool. "He does not know who she is." The general nodded. "No, Majesty. He appears unaware." The Queen stepped closer to the screen, studying every detail. The way the man smiled softly, the way he shielded the girl when the tunnel shook, the way he held her as if she were his own child. Something inside her, something buried under years of command and duty, stirred again. "He's protecting her," she said quietly. The general frowned. "Perhaps. Or perhaps he's using her to save himself. Humans are known to act selfishly." The Queen's golden eyes flashed. "You think I do not know selfishness, Thalor? You think kindness only belongs to my kind?" The general bowed quickly. "Forgive me, Majesty." But Queen Soraya said nothing more. She turned her attention back to the image. She watched as the human helped her daughter crawl deeper into the tunnel, away from the smoke. She watched him give her water from his flask. She saw him make funny faces to make the child laugh. Each simple act was like a soft blow to the Queen's heart. Once, long ago, before she became ruler, Soraya had smiled like that with her own child, without crown, without power, only love. But war and leadership had stolen that peace from her. And now, in the middle of a dying station, a human janitor was bringing it back to her through a screen. Her voice broke the silence again. "Keep watching them. Do not lose sight. Not for a single second." The officers nodded. The feeds were locked. Every motion, every heartbeat of the two inside the tunnel was tracked. But outside, things were getting worse. The station was breaking apart. More enemy ships were being detected. The general turned toward her again. "Majesty, we cannot delay much longer. We must evacuate you to the flagship." The Queen didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were still fixed on the screen. At that same moment on the feed, the human was whispering something to her daughter. The girl looked up at him with trust, then held out a glowing crystal charm, her royal pendant. She placed it in his hand. The Queen gasped softly. She gave him the royal light. No one spoke. That crystal was sacred. Only members of the royal family could touch it without permission. It recognized hearts, not rank. If the pendant accepted the human's touch, that meant he had no evil in him. Soraya's gaze hardened with decision. "We do not harm him," she said quietly. "If anyone dares fire near that tunnel, I will have them stripped of command." Majesty, with respect, she raised her voice, calm but sharp. "That human saved my daughter's soul before we could even reach her. Until I see otherwise, he is under my protection." The officers obeyed. Outside the screen, the chaos of the battle continued. Fire, explosions, broken metal drifting through the void. But in the royal chamber, everything was silent except for the faint hum of the monitors. The queen leaned back in her throne. Her golden eyes still on the screen, she whispered softly, almost to herself, "Who are you, human?" And as another explosion shook the station, the screen flickered, showing the man and child still alive, still together, unaware that the eyes of a queen were watching them, and her heart was slowly changing. The maintenance tunnel was dark and silent, far away from the noise of the explosions. Only the soft hum of emergency power lights filled the air. The small alien girl, Lyra, sat beside Evan, the human janitor who had saved her. For a few minutes, they both just breathed quietly. The girl's glowing skin shimmered faintly in the dim light. Evan's face was covered with dust and sweat, but his eyes stayed calm. He could still hear distant alarms echoing through the metal walls, but inside the tunnel, it felt like time had stopped. He looked at the little girl. She was hugging her knees, watching the bubbles still floating slowly around them. A few had stuck to the metal wall, catching light and shining like tiny planets. Evan smiled tiredly. "You like them, huh?" The girl didn't understand his words, but she nodded, eyes wide with curiosity. She reached out to catch another bubble, and it popped softly on her fingertip. She giggled. That small laugh was like music in the chaos. Evan leaned back against the wall, letting out a long breath. "Guess it worked," he whispered. "Bubbles always fix everything, huh?" He didn't know who she was. He didn't care. He only saw a scared child who needed someone to stay with her. He opened his small water bottle and handed it to her. "Here, drink. You must be thirsty." The girl looked unsure. She had never seen a bottle like that before. Evan smiled again and took a sip first to show her it was safe. Then he gave it back to her. She took it carefully and drank, her eyes never leaving his face. For a moment there was peace. Then the tunnel shook. A dull boom echoed nearby. Dust fell from the ceiling. Evan quickly looked up. "That was close," he muttered. He stood and checked the tunnel map on the wall. Most of the routes were blocked. The explosion must have destroyed the main paths, he sighed. "Great, we're stuck in here, kid." The girl tilted her head, watching him. She could feel his worry. Her species was sensitive to emotions. They could sense feelings like heat. She touched his hand softly, and her skin glowed faint blue. Evan looked at her, surprised. "You understand, don't you?" She didn't answer, but she smiled. Somehow, through silence and light, they understood each other more than words could ever explain. Evan sat down again. He remembered something. His sister back on Earth, who used to cry when their parents fought. He would blow bubbles for her too, just to make her laugh. That memory warmed his heart. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of candy, old, half-melted. "Want this?" he asked, showing it to her. The girl blinked, then took it carefully. She sniffed it, unsure, then licked it and smiled wide. "Sweet," she said softly, her first human word. Evan laughed. "Yeah, sweet. You're learning fast, kid," she pointed at him. "Even?" she tried to say, copying the name tag on his shirt. He nodded. "That's me." He pointed to her. "And you?" She touched her chest. Lyra, he repeated gently. "That's a beautiful name." They both smiled. Above them, through metal walls and wires, Queen Soraya was still watching. From her royal command ship, she studied every move on the holographic screen. She could hear faint sounds, the girl's laughter, the human's calm voice. Her advisors whispered behind her. "Majesty, the station will not survive long. We must retreat." But the queen raised her hand. "Not yet. Not until my daughter is safe." She turned her eyes back to the screen. What she saw there touched something deep inside her. The human didn't know he was being watched by a queen. He didn't know that the little girl was royal blood, and yet he treated her like she was the most important person in the universe. He cleaned the dust off her robe. He gave her water. He even made her laugh in the middle of a war. The queen whispered to herself, "He protects her like a father would." Her heart felt heavy. Power, titles, wealth. None of those things could buy what she saw on that screen. Pure kindness. Down in the tunnel, Evan was making plans. "All right, Lyra, we can't stay here forever. We'll have to move when the shaking stops." Lyra nodded, trusting him completely. He used a flashlight to check the way ahead. The air was filled with smoke, but he didn't show fear. He smiled at the girl to keep her calm. "We'll find a way out. I promise." She believed him. As they prepared to move, the light from Lyra's body glowed brighter, lighting the tunnel ahead like a lamp. Evan looked in awe. "Wow, you're my flashlight now," he joked. Lyra laughed again, holding his hand tightly. Together they started walking deeper into the unknown parts of the station, and far above the Queen whispered to her generals, "Prepare a team to extract them safely. But quietly. If anyone harms the human, they will answer to me." The guards bowed, but the Queen did not take her eyes off the screen. In that moment, she didn't see a janitor. She saw something far greater, a heart strong enough to calm a storm. And as the two figures walked deeper into the dark tunnels, the Queen felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The air inside the tunnel grew thicker, heavy with dust and smoke. Evan held Lyra's hand tightly as they walked through the darkness. The lights flickered weakly, and each sound echoed through the metal walls. The distant rumble of explosions, the groan of bending steel, the hiss of leaking pipes. They were still deep inside the lower decks of Ecliptor 9, far from the escape bays. Evan had no idea what had caused the disaster, but he could feel something worse was coming. He stopped for a moment to check the air vent. "The oxygen's dropping," he murmured. "We can't stay here long." Lyra watched him quietly. She didn't speak, but her glowing blue eyes followed his every move. Her light flickered nervously as if her body could sense danger. Evan smiled, trying to calm her. "It's okay, kid. We'll find a way out. Promise." He didn't know how, but he had to make her believe it. He guided her toward a hatch that led to the hangar bay. Maybe there were still escape pods left, but as he pushed open the hatch, the sound hit them first. Boom! A loud explosion shook the floor beneath them. Flames roared down the hall, lighting up the darkness. Evan pulled Lyra back just in time. Pieces of burning metal flew past, hitting the walls. He covered her with his body, protecting her from the heat. When the noise finally stopped, he looked out. What he saw froze his heart. Dozens of alien raiders were entering the station. Their ships had pierced the outer hull, and now they were storming in like a wave of fire. They weren't rescuers. They were attackers. They moved fast, shouting in a harsh language. Some carried plasma rifles. Others held capture nets. And they wore armor marked with a dark red symbol, the sign of the Dravok Raiders, known across the galaxy for hunting and selling rare beings. Evan whispered, "Lyra." "Stay behind me." The girl's eyes widened. She recognized the symbol. She knew what they wanted, her. Up in the royal command ship, Queen Soraya saw it too. She stood from her throne in alarm. "Dravok," she said sharply. "They've breached the station." Her generals began shouting orders, preparing ships for battle. But Soraya's gaze stayed fixed on the holographic feed showing her daughter and the human. She clenched her fist. "They are after my child," she whispered, "and he is standing between her and death." Back inside the hangar tunnel, Evan grabbed a fallen metal rod from the ground. It wasn't much, but it was something. He turned to Lyra. "Stay low. Don't move unless I say." She nodded, shaking but brave. The raiders entered the hangar, scanning the area with bright red lights. They were laughing, certain no one could stop them. But one small figure stood in their path, a man with no armor, no weapon, and no backup. Evan took a deep breath. His heart raced, but he didn't run. When the first raider spotted him, it shouted, "Human! Move aside!" Evan didn't move. "Sorry," he said quietly. "Can't do that." The raider aimed its rifle. Evan ducked, rolled behind a crate, and threw his metal rod. It struck the raider's arm, making it drop the weapon. Then he swung again, hitting another one with surprising strength. The hangar filled with chaos. Laser bolts flew past. Evan moved fast, using every bit of his cleaning gear, throwing tools, rolling under pipes, dodging blasts. He wasn't a soldier, but he knew the station better than anyone. He used the vents, the shadows, and the chaos to confuse them. Meanwhile, Lyra hid under a pile of metal crates, covering her mouth to stay silent. Her glowing light dimmed so she wouldn't be seen. Up above, Queen Soraya watched in disbelief. The human fought with nothing but courage, risking his life again and again. One raider aimed at him from behind. Soraya gasped, her hand tightening on the throne. "Behind you," she whispered, as if he could hear her. But somehow Evan turned at the last second, blocking the shot with a steel plate. The force threw him backward, but he stood again. Blood ran down his arm, yet he didn't stop. He looked toward the crates.
"Run, Lyra!"
he shouted. The girl crawled out, terrified but trusting him completely. He guided her toward a small escape pod at the edge of the hangar. He opened the door and pushed her inside. "Go, you'll be safe there." She shook her head, tears falling. "Ivan, come." He smiled, weak but warm. "I'll be right behind you, promise." Before she could argue, he slammed the pod door and pressed the launch button. The pod's engines roared and it shot out into space, a streak of light vanishing into the stars. Evan turned around, only to find himself surrounded. The raiders closed in. One struck him down with a blow to the chest. Another tied his hands with glowing restraints. As he fell to his knees, he looked up at the night sky through the hangar window. He smiled faintly, whispering, "She's safe." Up above, in the royal ship, Queen Soraya stood still. Her daughter was safe, but the human, the one who saved her, had been taken. Her voice was low and full of power. "Prepare my fleet," she commanded. "We are not leaving without him." Her general stared in shock. "Majesty, you would risk war for a human." The queen's eyes glowed gold like the suns themselves. "He saved my child," she said. "Now I will save him." And as the battle raged on, the fate of one human janitor began to change the destiny of an entire empire. The hangar was silent now. Only the sound of distant fire and broken metal filled the air. Evan lay on the cold floor, his hands bound with glowing restraints. His uniform was torn, his arm bleeding. The raiders had left him bruised but alive. They laughed as they dragged him toward their ship, unaware that their every move was being watched. High above the burning station, inside her royal flagship, Queen Soraya stood before a massive viewing screen. Her golden eyes burned with fury. She had seen everything, the way the human fought to save her child, how he faced the raiders alone, how he sent the princess away before they could catch her. He had risked his life without knowing who she was. The queen's voice trembled with quiet rage. "He saved my daughter, and now he will not die as a slave." Her general stood in silence, afraid to speak. Finally, General Thalor stepped forward. "Majesty, our forces are ready, but if we strike the raiders now, it could start a war." Soraya turned toward him slowly. "Then so be it," she said coldly. "I will not let kindness be punished." Her command was final. The fleet moved. Outside, the royal ships broke formation, diving toward the station like falling stars. Each vessel glowed with blue fire, their engines roaring across the void. Down below, the Dravok raiders loaded their prisoners, including Evan, into their transport craft. They laughed cruelly, talking about how much money they'd get for selling a brave little human. Evan stayed silent. His body ached, but his spirit did not break. He could only think of Lyra. He prayed she had landed safely. As the raider ship prepared to leave, a bright light flashed across the hangar. Then came the sound, a deep, thundering roar. The Queen's fleet had arrived. The raiders shouted in panic. "Royal forces!" "It's the Zinari fleet." Evan looked up, blinking through the smoke. The sky above the hangar doors glowed bright blue. Royal ships descended, firing precision shots that tore through the enemy vessels. In the chaos, one of the guards fell beside him, dropping a small plasma knife. Evan stared at it. Then, using all his strength, he rolled over, grabbed it, and cut through the glowing restraints. His hands were free. He didn't run in, he searched. His eyes scanned the hangar until he saw a small emergency beacon blinking near a control panel. If he could reach it, he could signal the rescue teams. He crawled through the smoke, dodging falling debris and sparks. The air burned his lungs, but he kept going. Each movement felt heavy, but he refused to stop. Then, a shadow moved behind him. A raider raised its weapon. Evan turned just in time to block the shot with the fallen metal plate he'd used earlier. The blast knocked him back, but he held the plate up again, swinging it hard and striking the raider's helmet. The alien fell. Evan grabbed the weapon from the ground and aimed it clumsily, firing toward the ceiling, not to kill but to draw attention. The sound echoed across the hangar. Moments later, a massive door opened and royal soldiers in silver armor stormed in. They fired with skill, pushing the raiders back. From behind them stepped Queen Soraya herself, tall, regal, glowing like a living sun. The battlefield froze. Evan stared at her, shocked. He didn't know who she was, but her presence felt powerful, almost unreal. The Queen's eyes locked onto him. "Human," she said softly, her voice echoing through the hall. "You are safe now." A raider lunged toward her, shouting in rage. The Queen didn't flinch. Her eyes flashed and a wave of golden energy burst from her hands, sending the raider flying across the room. The remaining attackers fled, terrified. When silence returned, the Queen walked toward Evan. Her steps were slow, graceful but filled with strength. She stopped before him and looked down. "You fought to protect my daughter," she said quietly. "You risked your life when others ran." Evan shook his head weakly. "I just did what anyone should do." The Queen's expression softened. "No," she said. "Not anyone. Many have power, but few have heart." She gestured to her guards. "Free him, and tend to his wounds." The soldiers obeyed quickly, helping Evan stand. He winced in pain, but he stayed strong. As they led him toward the ship, the Queen paused and looked back at the burning hangar. "No one harms a soul under my protection," she said firmly. "Not while I reign." Outside, the royal fleet pulled away from the broken station. The fire behind them faded into the endless night. Evan sat in a quiet medical bay wrapped in healing cloth. The ship hummed softly, calm after the storm. He didn't know where he was going, only that he was safe for now. Then the door opened and a small figure ran in, Lyra. She jumped into his arms, her glowing eyes bright with joy. "Ivan!" she shouted, hugging him tightly. He laughed softly, holding her close. "Hey, kid. Told you I'd be right behind you." Standing at the doorway, Queen Soraya watched them, a faint smile touching her lips. Her voice was gentle now, no longer sharp with command. "You saved her life," she said. "But more than that, you reminded me what life is worth." Evan looked at her, unsure what to say. "Just glad she's okay." The Queen nodded slowly. "You will not be forgotten, human." As the ship sailed through the stars, the human janitor who once cleaned floors sat beside a princess and her mother, unaware that his courage had just changed the fate of an empire. The royal flagship sailed through the stars like a floating city of light. Inside, silence ruled the long silver halls. The war was over, but tension still filled the air. Evan sat on the edge of a soft metal bench, his hands fidgeting nervously. He was no longer wearing his damaged uniform. Instead, the royal healers had dressed him in a clean white robe. His wounds were sealed, but his heart was not calm. He had been told that Queen Soraya wanted to see him in the Hall of Truth. No one explained why. He kept replaying everything in his head. The attack, the fire, the moment he saved Lyra. He still couldn't believe. The small girl he had comforted with soap. Bubbles was actually a princess. Now he was about to stand before her mother, a queen who ruled 1,000 worlds. When the doors finally opened, 2 royal guards stepped forward. "Human, Her Majesty awaits." Evan took a deep breath and followed them into the hall. The Hall of Truth was enormous, a dome of crystal and light. In the center stood the Queen's throne, carved from white stone that shimmered like ice. The walls glowed with shifting colors, reacting to every sound, every emotion. Evan's footsteps echoed as he approached. His eyes caught a glimpse of Lyra, sitting quietly beside her mother. She smiled when she saw him, but the Queen did not. Queen Soraya's gaze was unreadable, calm yet powerful, gentle yet cold. "Human," she began, her voice deep and clear. "You stand in the presence of the Zenari throne. Do you understand where you are?" Evan nodded slightly. I think so, Your Majesty." "You saved my daughter," she continued. "You faced death for one you did not know. For that I owe you gratitude." Evan swallowed hard. "I didn't know she was your daughter. I just didn't want a child to die." The Queen tilted her head slightly, studying him. "That is what confuses me," she said. "You had nothing to gain. You are not a soldier, not a hero. You are a janitor. Why did you not run?" Her words hit him, but he didn't flinch. He took a breath and spoke quietly. Because fear spreads fast in space, he said. Everyone panics, but someone has to stay calm, even if that someone is just the janitor. A few of the royal advisors murmured among themselves. The Queen's eyes softened just slightly. You speak with heart, she said. But hearts can deceive. Many men hide ambition behind kindness. Evan shook his head. Maybe, but I don't have anything to hide. I just saw a scared little girl and did what I could. For a moment, the hall fell silent. Then the Queen raised her hand. A holographic display appeared in the air, showing Evan on the space station blowing bubbles, calming Lyra during the chaos. Everyone watched in silence as the image played. The tiny girl's tears stopped. She smiled. When the image ended, the Queen lowered her hand. Even as fire surrounded you, she said softly, you created peace. Evan looked down. I didn't think about it much. I just wanted her to feel safe. The Queen stood, descending from her throne. The hall grew dim, the light following her as she approached him. Do you know what our people call humans? She asked quietly. Evan hesitated. I've heard some names, he said carefully. We call you the short-lived ones, she said, because your kind burns brightly for a moment, then fades. Yet somehow, you make that moment matter. She stopped in front of him, her golden eyes glowing like suns. You have changed something, Evan Holt, not just in my daughter's heart, but in mine. Behind her, the advisors exchanged uneasy looks. One of them stepped forward. Majesty, he said quickly, he is still an outsider. He cannot stay among us. The council will not allow it. The Queen turned her head sharply. The council serves the throne, not the other way around. The advisor bowed, stepping back in silence. Soraya looked back at Evan. You have two choices, she said. You may return to your home world. You will be honored and your name remembered. She paused. Or, you may stay. Among the stars. You will live as one of my people, under my protection. Evan blinked. Stay? In your world? The Queen nodded slowly. Yes. My daughter believes the stars sent you for a reason. Perhaps she is right. Evan glanced at Lyra. Her eyes shone with hope. He thought of Earth, of long days cleaning empty halls, of people walking past without seeing him. He thought of the fear on the station and the light in Lyra's eyes when she saw the bubbles. He took a breath. I think I want to stay. The Queen's face softened into something rare. A smile. Then it is decided. She placed her hand gently on his shoulder. Welcome, human. From this day forward, you are under the protection of the Zinari Queen. The hall erupted in soft whispers. Lyra ran forward, hugging Evan tightly. He smiled, feeling warmth spread through his tired heart. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a background figure in someone else's story. He felt seen. He felt home. But deep in the shadows behind the throne, a pair of unseen eyes watched, and not everyone was pleased with the Queen's choice. The true danger had only just begun. Days passed, and the royal flagship glided silently through the cosmos. From his new quarters, Evan Holt could see the stars spread out like silver dust. Each night he wondered if Earth was among them, small, blue, and distant. Life aboard the Zinari ship was strange but peaceful. Everywhere he went, eyes followed him, curious, cautious, sometimes even afraid. To them, he was the human who saved the princess, and the Queen's chosen one. But behind those whispers, danger still stirred. Late one evening, while Evan was teaching Lyra how to make soap bubbles again using alien gel, a soft hum echoed through the ship, a code only the Queen's guards should know. But this sound was different, wrong. The lights flickered. The gentle air turned cold. Lyra looked up, her small voice trembling. Evan, what's happening? Before he could answer, a deep boom shook the deck. The room's walls shuddered, and alarms screamed. Red lights flared everywhere. Stay behind me, Evan shouted, pulling Lyra close as a door burst open. A figure stepped through the smoke. Not a raider this time, but a tall Zinari noble dressed in black armor, his eyes glowing crimson. Human, he hissed. The Queen made a mistake saving you. Evan's heart raced. Who are you? The figure smirked. I am Lord Careth, head of the Royal Council, and tonight I correct her mistake. Before Evan could move, 2 more soldiers entered. They weren't royal guards. Their armor carried the mark of rebellion. Lyra gasped. Careth, you swore loyalty to my mother. He sneered. Loyalty? To a queen blinded by pity for a fragile creature? He pointed at Evan. He is a threat. He changed her judgment, her heart, and that makes him dangerous. Evan clenched his fists. All I did was save her child. And for that, Careth growled, you've begun to change the course of an empire. The rebels lunged forward. Evan grabbed Lyra's arm and ran, dodging plasma bolts that lit the hallway like lightning. The air burned, walls cracked from the heat. He could barely breathe, but he didn't stop. They turned a corner and ducked into a maintenance tunnel, the same kind Evan had once cleaned every day. I know these halls, he whispered. We'll lose them here. They crawled through the narrow duct, hearing shouts behind them. Each sound drew closer. Lyra trembled, clutching the small bubble wand he'd given her, the last piece of calm in chaos. Evan, she whispered, why do people hate what's good? He looked back at her tired, frightened eyes. Because good things change the world, Lyra, he said quietly, and change scares people. Suddenly, the tunnel ahead glowed. More rebels. They had them surrounded, but then, a sharp blast shook the ship again. The floor opened beneath them and they fell into a lower level, landing hard. Evan groaned, helping Lyra stand. The corridor below was empty, filled only with the hum of engines. Then from the shadows a familiar voice spoke. You run fast, human. Evan turned. Queen Soraya stood there, her armor shining, her eyes fierce. Behind her, royal guards aimed weapons upward. She had come herself. Mother! Lyra cried, running into her arms. Soraya hugged her tightly, then looked up toward the ceiling, her voice thunderous. Careth, you betray your queen? His mocking laughter echoed down. You betray your blood by trusting the lesser species. Soraya raised her hand. Then you will answer for your crimes. Golden energy flared from her palm, cutting through the metal above. The light struck the shadows, revealing Careth and his rebels. They tried to fight, but the queen's fury was unstoppable. The entire hall glowed as if the stars themselves had awakened. When the light faded, silence returned. The rebels were gone. Evan stood there, breathless. You came for us. Soraya turned to him, her golden armor still gleaming. I said you were under my protection. I meant it. He smiled faintly. You risked everything. She shook her head softly. No, human. You taught me what everything means. For a long moment, no one spoke. The hum of the engines was the only sound. Then Lyra looked up and whispered, Mother, can he stay with us? Forever? Soraya looked at Evan. He seemed out of place, a simple man among royal stars. But something in his eyes made her nod. He has already earned his place, she said. From that day forward, Evan Holt was no longer just a janitor. He became the Queen's advisor, a bridge between two worlds. He taught the Zinari about humanity's heart, their flaws and their hope, and every time fear returned, he reminded them of one simple thing, how calm could be found even in chaos, with just a single bubble. Years later, songs were sung about the human who saved the princess, not with weapons but with kindness. And in the quiet corners of the royal palace, a young girl and her human guardian could still be seen, laughing together as bright bubbles floated through the silver halls, drifting among the stars.